Hey folks, I hope you're all doing well. We are taking a look at what we can generally speaking expect from the Pluto and Aquarius transit. Now, if you watched my earlier video on what each zodiac sign can generally expect from the Pluto and Aquarius transit, I said in there that I was going to cover the general themes, and I quickly realized by the end of the video that I don't have the energy to keep going, and that this really deserved a separate video because this is such a powerful cleaning of the slate kind of transit, and because we're talking about almost 2 decades. So to me, that deserves its own video, okay? So I have here with me the Uncertain Oracle by the Numinous Spirit Press. Let me get it so it doesn't glare at you. They're circle cards. I love them. We have the Seventh Sphere Oracle by Labyrinthos, and then I have the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. Generally speaking, let's take a look at what this transit holds for us. I've already shuffled and pulled out 4 cards from the Uncertain Oracle. I have Release, which is what I was saying earlier about the cleansing of a slate that's been written on. This is Aquarius, and Aquarius is making way for new things to happen to us, new traditions. Artificial intelligence is something that I mentioned in my previous Zodiac Pluto in Aquarius video. I'll link it somewhere down in the description for you. Also, I just see us releasing old patterns that have served us for now a little bit over 200 years. The last time we saw this was between the years 1777 and 1798. And by the way, I'm covering the United States in this particular video. If you would like me to cover another country, let me know in the comments, okay? But please keep in mind that what I'm seeing is going to be specific to the United States, okay? Releasing of old structures, such as old political structures, old family structures. During the Industrial Revolution, the family unit started to change from one that had several generations in one household to one that slowly became more of the nuclear family that we're accustomed to seeing today. 2 parents, 2 kids, fill in the blank. Sometimes it meant more. But we really saw a shift for families that were going more towards the city life as opposed to the agricultural. Before then, agriculture, farm life was how people supported themselves, period. They didn't rely on factory jobs because those really by and large didn't exist. The Industrial Revolution changed all that. That is one thing that I definitely see being released with this particular transit, is we might see a change in the family structure. For instance, remember we're still in the general part of the reading. I'm going to get into some more specific categories here in just a second. The next card I pulled was Fractured. We're definitely going to see the breaking apart of things that we thought were foundational, but were in fact subject to change, just like any other part of our lives. Those are going to be difficult. I can see that because the last card I pulled for this was Frustration. There's going to be a lot of anger, swelling anger. I heard specifically swelling. Not a physical swelling, but there's going to be a lot. This is going to be a time of high emotions. You know what just popped into my head was the French Revolution and all the executions that took place during that time. There were old political structures that got swept away during that particular revolution. There were a whole lot of deaths that happened too. I'm sure that a proper historian could talk about whether the structures that replaced the old monarchy were good and bad, and there are trade-offs to both the monarchy and what eventually became what we have of the French government today. But there was a lot of tumultuousness around that time period. It wasn't just in France. It was in other parts of the world where people were saying it's not appropriate for us to own other human beings and enslave other human beings. That is not humane. One of the hallmarks of Aquarius is the humanitarian aspect. We start to ask ourselves, what is humane, what is most beneficial to the human race. And that's when a lot of cultures around that time, not the United States, that was still a debate that they had yet to settle, but around 1777 to 1798, that was around the time that people started to say, it is not appropriate, it is not good for the human race to enslave other human beings. And that's when you started to see slavery being abolished in many areas. The Haitian Revolution was during this time as well. This was the first successful slave uprising since Spartacus. And I want you to think about that for just a second. That is centuries that a proper slave uprising was successful in overturning a government that was so deeply oppressive. Please do read up more into that if you can. But it wasn't just during the time of the Haitian Revolution. That was also the American Revolution as well. 1777 was when I believe the Declaration of Independence was signed, and around that time is when the Revolutionary War was being fought, when the 13 colonies said, we've had enough of British rule. If we're not going to be represented, we don't want to be ruled by our British overlords. And I understand that there are cousins now, politically speaking. When we go to war, they go with us. So if they go to war, we go with them, right? I understand that they're cousins to us today, but they weren't back then. And the reason we have this cousin-type relationship today is because the revolution took place back then. And it's interesting that I say cousins. That's mentioning family structure, and I suspect that we're going to see a lot of relationships change that we took for granted between the United States and other countries. There might be some countries that we have a falling out with. There might be some countries that we build new relationships with. Good and bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good to build a relationship with a country. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing in order for us to have a relationship with another country to fall apart. So, fractured, frustration, and release are 3 cards that I've got right now. A high time of frustration because foundations will be fracturing that we took for granted. We're going to be releasing old structures that no longer serve us. Last and not least, we've got visitation. And this could be the visitation of old souls that are being reincarnated into this era because they're needed. They passed away in other transits, and now they're being reincarnated onto Earth once again because they have specific talents that they need to share with the human race in order for themselves to benefit, but for the rest of us to benefit as well. Beethoven was not born, but he was putting out music during this time. Mozart was putting out music during this time, and part of me wonders if those weren't old souls that were brought back onto the earth because they had something really neat to share with all of us, not just themselves. Yes, visitation of old souls, also of angels, angelic beings. And you know what I'm getting? I know we call them aliens. I hate the word aliens, but extraterrestrial beings. I'm wondering if we're not going to get a visitation from people that we regard to be extraterrestrial. I know that we've already had I forget his name, but he went before Congress and he said the United States military has been observing UFOs now for decades, and it's my responsibility to come forward and talk about this because to not do so is inimical, is harmful to us as a human race. We need to know about this. We needed to be discussing about this. I wonder if it isn't just old souls being reincarnated. I wonder if it's not extraterrestrial beings whom we'll have some kind of encounter with. And I'll be the first to say that I downright didn't believe at all. I thought it was bullshit, basically, to talk about extraterrestrial beings before I saw that particular person have his conversation with Congress. It was public. It was videoed. I need to find it, and I might link it down below if I can find it, okay? It was 2 hours. So if you have the patience to watch a conversation for 2 hours, it's well worth the watch. It made me a believer. it would change. It changes the mind. It makes you wonder why our governments are hiding something like this. And I wonder if this isn't going to be something that our governments can't hide anymore, because it's just not something that they're able to do or that they want to do. We're going to see the fracturing of a lot of different structures, including our belief structures, and I wonder if that won't be part of it when we say, we used to think this was bullshit, and now we are confronted with the evidence. We cannot believe that it's bullshit anymore. That's going to be frustrating for a lot of different people. Okay, that was a general feel. Let's get into specifics. Let's talk about the economy in general first of all. The first card I pulled from the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot was the Seven of Cups. In this particular image, you've got a cup of riches. You've got a beautiful woman coming out of a cup. You've got a snake. You've got a demon. You've got a couple of different things. And this is meant to represent choices that we could make. And they're all kind of an emotionally based choice. They're all emotionally based because that's kind of the only thing that we can go on during this really tumultuous time of just tremendous change. A lot of shifting around is happening. So our feelings are going to lead the way. And in a certain sense, that is not always bad, especially if our heart leads us to the correct choice. But I'm seeing here with the Temperance card in reverse, which is directly underneath the Seven of Cups, that our choices in the past are coming back around to bite us in this particular transit. Temperance in reverse tells me that some rebalancing needs to take place. This is also about the mixing of different elements. The Temperance card, when it's upright, is about mixing different elements for our highest good. But now I'm getting the sensation that we made choices in the past. We took this information and took that information and melded it together to create a new option for us, something that we did in the past, and the choice was not good. The alchemization of these different options was not good. And so now we're going to have to revisit the choices we made in the Eight of Cups, which is also in reverse and sitting underneath the Temperance card. We don't want to revisit these circumstances because they were painful for us. But if we're to make positive choices in the future, we're going to need to revisit those negative choices that we made in the past so that we can roll forward. And also, we're going to have to deal with the consequences of our choices in the past. It's interesting that this is all about emotion. Things that we did, things that we said based on emotion, we're going to have to, the United States as a country is going to have to revisit those choices, even if they're really uncomfortable and they kind of suck generally to revisit. We're going to have to deal with them again because that's Pluto in Aquarius saying we're having to clean the slate, and that first, in order to clean the slate, you need to confront what was written on the slate in order to wipe it off, okay? We'll get into some more specifics later. Actually, let's wait on that. On the next row, I've got 9 cards pulled in general, and we might get more specifics in Lenormand, okay? Or maybe we just want to leave it generally speaking and allow the future to unfold, okay? I've got the Four of Pentacles, I've got the King of Pentacles in reverse, and then I have Death in reverse. And this talks to me about the wealthy American class that has hoarded its wealth. Seen in the Four of Pentacles, they have hoarded their wealth now for generations, and in Death reverse, they are avoiding the end of something with all their might. You know, wealth can do a lot for a person, but it can't help them avoid death. And I think it's kind of interesting when the Death card in reverse for upright, there are all kinds of people who are falling to death on its horse. And one of the first figures in that particular card is a very well-dressed person who's already fallen to death. I think that this might be, we're going to get into more specifics later, but this is the shifting of possibly wealth redistribution. And I don't mean in the sense that they're forced or taxed out of their homes, for instance, although that could take place. But I'm really seeing people ask, is it humane for the wealthy class, for the business class, to have so much when there are good, hardworking people who have next to nothing, who are struggling for food, who are struggling for housing, people with full-time jobs who are forced to live out of their cars because they have no other choice? How is this equal in one of the wealthiest nations in the world? How is that equal? How is that beneficial to humanity when the 1% has so much more wealth than all of the 99% underneath it combined? And don't forget that Pluto and Capricorn, which we just transited out of and which we'll briefly transit back into towards the end of this year, those are when those questions started coming up, is why is it like this? Who has all this cash? It really is 99% versus the 1%. And some might argue that it's even a smaller percentage that has so much of the wealth contained in just like a few people. There's going to be questions about whether that is good for humanity in general, and that's going to start to shift. Remember, frustration and fracturing goes into this. In the other section, I think this is interesting. The Lovers is my internet card because there's a cloud that appears. I remember asking Spirit, what is my internet card? And they pulled the Lovers card for me, and they brought my eye to the cloud, and I realized, oh my God, it's the cloud. Underneath the cloud are two figures. That's us, the people who are not in control of the internet. The angel above the two people, the two figures, are the people who collectively control what the internet does. You can think of it as that, say for instance, the people who own and change the algorithms of things like Twitter, also known as X, as YouTube, as TikTok. Those are the people who pull the strings and make the website go where it goes. And the people below the cloud who are looking up have no choice but to do as the algorithm, as those people put into place. They have no choice but to follow the algorithm. They have no choice but to follow the people who make that particular part of the internet run. Twitch popped into my head too. Twitch is part of this as well. Below the Lovers card, I have the Three of Wands in reverse, and also the Nine of Wands in reverse. I need to slow down a little bit. I apologize to Spirit. So the internet has some stuff that we are not expecting. There are some ships coming in which we definitely weren't expecting, and we might not even like what those ships are carrying. Maybe we like some of it. Maybe we don't like some other things that those ships carry, but we're not expecting what directions the internet goes. We're not expecting what the people in charge of those major websites, we're not expecting to see what they're going to do. Keep in mind that they have money in mind. I know I talked about wealth redistribution, the shaking of foundations that ask whether it's humane for one of the wealthiest countries in the world to hog so much wealth to just a few people. I wonder if that isn't going to be part of this, if there isn't going to be some questioning of, is this right for the internet to be so centralized to a few people's decisions? In many ways, the internet has become deeply decentralized. When I think about how Hollywood at one point had the exclusive ability to create film products, that's been now utterly decentralized to people who have a camera, right? To people who have a phone and who can make their own videos. That's been utterly decentralized. On the other hand, we're still being controlled by a few people who have control over these major websites. Remember that other video sharing platforms have died in regards to YouTube. I remember Blip TV used to be a thing, and then when YouTube came onto the scene, that Blip TV gradually died. Does anyone ever go onto Vimeo anymore? That's another video sharing website that still exists, but it will never be, it might never be. Things change, right? But it does not currently have the processing power. It does not have the same power in general over people that YouTube does, for instance. With the Nine of Wands in reverse underneath the Three of Wands in reverse underneath the Lovers, I'm seeing us being utterly defenseless to this. We allow these websites into our daily lives and we're almost dependent on them for our entertainment, for us to upload content, our decentralized videos, so to speak. We are utterly defenseless to what these people in power can do to change our livelihoods. There are plenty of people who rely on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube for their livelihoods, and I'm seeing the possibility that these structures could be deeply abused. And that could be what we see in the Three of Wands right here, is that we're not expecting to be so deeply controlled that we become utterly defenseless to whatever it is they decide to do now and in the next 20 years. There are going to be some radical changes in that department, and I don't believe that we're completely ready for that. No specifics for this general economy reading. I think it's interesting that the internet appears as part of this economy general reading, but it also makes sense. I think that we're going to gradually see a bigger and bigger shift onto the internet because that's become one of the biggest inventions of the past 30, 40 years. And I'm not sure exactly how long the internet has been around, but I know that it's existed since at least the 80s. And I think that we're going to just see more of it take over our lives. Even if you don't create content for any part of the internet, even if you just consume, this is still going to radically change how you consume your particular corner of the internet. Let's switch into specifics in terms of the economy. I believe I'm going to handle jobs next. I want to get into some specifics when it comes to jobs, and I mean some specifics. This is going to be a pretty unpredictable transit. I'm getting that there will be some things that Spirit hides from me for my own good and for others' own good, okay? But I pulled 7 cards from the 7th Sphere Lenormand, and it is talking about some jobs ending, specifically for those in female-dominated professions, such as nursing, such as teachers, such as daycare workers. I'm seeing a swift ending, or at least a really swift changing. I've got the scythe here, which is why I'm saying swift. I'm seeing a really swift change to those kinds of professions. Something else is going to dominate, and there's going to be some real risk in what chooses to dominate. I'm feeling that artificial intelligence is going to start creeping into those professions, if you will, those caretaking, compassionate care kind of professions where feminine people tend to go. Okay? I'm speaking generally. But there's something about the love and affection in this department ending for money's sake. While fish does not appear in this reading, I am seeing fox and scythe. These 2 cards are bookending each other. That tells me that there's a really destructive end to this kind of job, nursing, teaching, that kind of thing, because it's about selfishness, and that this is going to grow. This is already has its roots planted in the earth, so to speak. But especially during this transit, this is going to grow tremendously. Bear and mice bookend each other in this particular spread. Ship is at the center of the spread, so that's a long-term journey. That makes sense to me. We're talking about this transit lasting for almost 2 decades. Excuse me. Bear and mice, that's about someone who I often associate bear with mama bear, kind of a feel, and that's kind of interesting. Because whoever replaces these kinds of professions, these pink collar professions, I hate to put it that way, but that's what this is talking about, that these are going to be destroyed. And it's going to be really, really awful. You know what just popped into my mind? When doctors started to push out the midwives and started to call them witches, because the midwives were threats to the new profession. Midwives back in the day wouldn't just deliver babies. They'd mix herbs. They were the doctors in many cases, because that was all these communities had prior to the Industrial Revolution. And of course, doctors existed before the Industrial Revolution, but they really started to take hold in their communities around that time. And it makes sense that, when we talk about clearing the slate, that doesn't always mean that it's a good thing to clear the slate. To be sure, there are some things in pink-collar professions that need to be changed. I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't say that American education doesn't need some radical change. But what's going on here feels quite destructive, and it feels like it's going to benefit just a few people, specifically the people who want to make money on this. I've been hearing talk about artificial intelligence replacing teachers in general now for a while. I first heard it back in 2012 when I was in graduate school. They were talking about eventually there just being graders in the classroom, just being classroom monitors, that there would just be a teacher who would be on the screen through Zoom, for instance. And that's what we said back in 2012. We're now in 2024. It's been a number of years, and I can see artificial intelligence creeping into the classroom, into the hospital room, into the doctor's office, into other pink-collar kinds of professions. And we weren't expecting to see this, like we were saying earlier with the Rider-Waite-Smith reading. We weren't expecting to see this, and it's not going to feel pleasant. I can see now with the Temperance card in reverse in that other reading, if we read it from crossways, I was reading it just diagonally. If we're reading it crossways, it was Temperance in reverse, it was the King of Pentacles in reverse, and then it was Three of Wands in reverse. There are going to be some really unpleasant changes when it comes to the people in power. They're going to say, this makes more money for us to have a machine doing this particular task in the hospital setting than it is to hire a person to do this. Machines don't get tired. They break down, but you just need someone to fix the machine at that point. Machines don't need holidays. They don't need sick leave. They don't need to see their families. They're going to, I think, in some ways, start replacing human labor with machine labor. In an ideal circumstance, that would be good for us, because that means that we don't have to do that mundane task, but that's where it's going to start, with the mundane tasks, and then it's going to gradually eat at these professions that were traditionally done by human beings. You're going to see the foundations of whole professions being replaced by machines. You're going to start seeing those replaced during this Pluto in Aquarius transit. Remember that we just started to see the rise of the machine during the Industrial Revolution back in the years 1777 to 1798. We started to see those inventions take place and replace human labor. And I think we're going to see another change in this particular era. Okay? Spirit says that's not enough. One more thing. There's some real risk involved. And I said a sudden end with this Scythe card. It is on the house of the ship, this is going to be a long ending. That tells me that's going to be a long ending. Family structure. The ship lands on the house of the house, which talks to me about family structure, what goes on behind the scenes in the private home. And there are going to be a lot of changes when there's the beginning of the end to the pink collar professions. Inevitably, that's going to change how the family structure works, both for the negative and for the positive. With Fox, we've got tree. That lands on the house of the tree. Growing selfishness. I feel like in many ways the pink collar profession has been looked down on for a long, long time. And I think that we're going to see more of that, unfortunately. We're going to see that negative structure become stronger. We're not going to easily see destruction. It's not going to be clear. I think that the people who are going to be in charge, such as that King of Pentacles in reverse, they're going to do a lot to hide that from people in general because they don't want to cause mass panic. They don't want to telegraph their moves, so to speak. They want those structures to be replaced because it is more cost efficient. They don't want people to freak out about this. And I see a lot of feminine people saying this is good for us because in this case, anima lands on the house of the snake. And now this is interesting. I'm getting the image of the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail. These are going to be feminine people who say, yes, this is good for us. This gets rid of a lot of mundane labor that we have to do on a daily basis, for instance, like artificial intelligence grading papers. But that's when it starts to creep. That's when the artificial intelligence starts to get further into our lives in ways that we weren't expecting. And it looks like it's going to be feminine people who welcome this in, who tell us that this is a good thing. We might be more trusting of these people because they're the experts, because supposedly they are compassionate. And I know that I'm going by stereotypes. Unfortunately, the United States is conservative in many regards. Men can be deeply compassionate, but women have a stereotype of being able to be more compassionate. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It is a stereotype. It's harmful to us. I'm also getting that these feminine people who might be at the top of their professions, maybe not, are saying, don't you want more time with your family? These machines are going to give you more time with your families, and they're going to they're going to help conceal a lot of what's going on, what's changing for the worse. Okay, that's going to be a major theme, it feels like, that a lot of people are going to be talking about over the next several years. Let's move on to another part of the economy. Let's talk a little bit about wealth distribution in terms of like a more specific topic with the economy. I've got rider, key, whip, clouds, dog, house, and bouquet. So right away we've got the clouds as the central theme, and it lands on the house of the house. That tells me that we are going to be I'll get into some specifics, but we're going to be seeing more clearly the structures that a lot of the most wealthy classes in the United States have kept hidden from us. Because I see with rider, that lands on the house of the rider. It's going to be fast-moving news thanks to the internet, thanks to the power of the internet. Rider book ends with bouquet, which tells me that this is going to be a topic of conversation, household conversation, that we're going to be talking about this for a long time. But I also see the potential for a lot of rumors to be circulating when people chitter-chat about, all the newest things that are happening in the topic of wealth distribution, because bouquet lands on the house of the snake. Now, I talked about things being unlocked because key and house bookend each other. Key, to me, speaks of revolution, and I know that I talked about revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, where wealth shifts around a lot. Aquarius questions whether something is humane, good for humanity, and sometimes that means some really punishing structures, but I think it's interesting that key appears bookending with the house. That's literally unlocking the house that has held all this wealth back. And again, fish does not appear in this particular reading, but I don't feel like it needs to. We asked about wealth distribution. Here is our answer. It feels like the storehouses are going to be unlocked in many, many ways. What was kept behind hidden doors? This is interesting. Clouds, the central theme, appears on house. House appears on clouds. And I'm talking about the themes underneath each of these cards. So something's going to get unlocked. Things are going to start clearing away. We're going to see more easily how the wealthy retain so much wealth. And I see them being punished heavily because we have here whip and we have here dog. There are going to be a lot of people who are deeply loyal to the movements that punish the wealthy class, the business class, for having hoarded their wealth so long, to the detriment of all kinds of good, hardworking people who just want to be able to feed their families. That's it. Who just want to have good homes for their families and don't want to be pushed into high crime, bad environment, homes that are in bad environments, for instance. And I mean literally like in the environment in general. I mean like in terms of pollution, that kind of thing. It's not equal. It's not humane to everybody. And I do feel like there's going to be at least the start of a revolution here to say it is not humane for the wealthiest nation, one of the wealthiest nations in the world, to have this much wealth between just a few people when so many others suffer just to get a regular day's pay. You know, like not too many generations ago, just a generation or two ago, there was one person who could work in the household and have enough money for a few vacations a year, a nice house, cars, that kind of thing. And I understand that wasn't everyone's experience, but that was a lot more people's experience not too long ago. When we started sending factories and manufacturing overseas to other countries, we started shifting that wealth over to other countries. And that benefited a few people at the top. I think that we're going to see more punishment. Well, again, with the whip, that's about spanking someone, so to speak, for holding back so much wealth when it doesn't do any. At that point, to that person who has billions of dollars, it's just numbers to them. It's not attached to this money gets me food, this money gets me housing, this gets me security, this gives me this and that. It's just numbers to them in ways that it isn't for a lot of people of the working class who work their asses off just to have a few dollars. They're the ones who say a meal at McDonald's is too expensive for me and my family now. There's that disconnect for the business class that isn't there for the working class, and I think that you're going to see much more of a movement towards punishing those people at the top for being so unkind. And that's not to say that there aren't a lot of wealthy people who are generous and kind with their money, who see the structures in place that keep them so wealthy and want to do something about it. I don't think that's going to be about this so much, but there is the possibility that they'll go along with these movements that say this isn't equal, this isn't fair, this isn't humane. That's what I'm seeing here. Let us take a look at housing now that we're talking about houses. Lenormand is one of the most literal cartomancy systems out there. And since we have a house card, I wonder if we won't see something to do with house. Give me just a second. So I've already shuffled the cards and I've laid them out. We've got clover, cross, star, ship, and book. I think it's interesting that star lands on the house of ship because for a lot of people in the United States, it's a dream still to be able to afford a home and be able to live in the home, at least for a decent while. For a lot of people, it's an investment, but at the end of the day, it's a home for somebody to live. And I feel like a lot of us have lost sight of that it's not an investment. I understand that for the business class, it is. And that might be something that we see shift in that wealth distribution cycle, is we're going to see less of an investment thing because people scream for it to be so. There's that revolutionary aspect again. But I see a progression of wishes, hopes, and dreams, and look at that. Ship appearing on the house of the house when you think about houses and Lenormand. It's still going to be a long journey for a lot of people. but I see us uncovering secrets, the rise of education about secrets that have been held back from us when it comes to how housing became this thing where it was an investment and not a home for people to live in and raise their families, or just have some sense of security if they choose not to raise their families here. It sucks for people to be nomadic if they don't want to be nomadic. And I come back again to those people who are forced to work full-time jobs out of their car because they can't afford a home in their area that they choose to live in, or that they're forced to live in. Either one. Clover appears on the house of the rider, which tells me about a lot of fast-moving risks, as well as rewards when it comes to thinking of homes as investments. And I'm thinking about risks because, again, we're going to see a lot of this part of the economy being revolutionized, especially when it comes to wealth redistribution. So there might be some risk in investing in homes, maybe perhaps as a landlord. I know that there are a lot of corporate entities doing the whole landlord thing, and I think that there could be the possibility of a lot of risk being associated with being a landlord, whether you're a mom and pop kind of landlord or whether you're a massive corporate entity. There's going to be a lot more risk in the United States when it comes to choosing this kind of investment strategy. Possibly, okay? Things could change. Specifically, I'm seeing it become a burden. A risk not worth taking is what I just heard. Those people are going to wish for something else. It's just going to be a risk not worth taking because so many people want a home. And we've been talking about housing now for a couple of years, really ever since the pandemic was a thing. People started rushing for homes that weren't apartments because they wanted some more space from other people. And that's when this conversation really started to kick in about what it means to go for the American dream and go for a home, for instance. And I just see it becoming more of a burden, more of a risky burden for people to hoard homes as an investment strategy. So in terms of housing, we might see some good things, we might see some bad things. I'm hoping for some more positive trade-offs than negative trade-offs when it comes to this. But time will tell. Keep in mind that we've got 2 decades with this particular Pluto and Aquarius transit, and the unexpected can happen. Okay, let's get into something else. I think that I have got art, film, and music next. And when I say film, I mean the decentralized version of film that the everyday person has the ability to do with their phone, for instance. Not just what Hollywood does. Be right back. So let's get into it. It's interesting that the Nine of Pentacles appears in the center of this particular spread. That tells me about the individual really coming to the forefront when it comes to whether they paint, sculpt, digital paintings, whatever have you. They create music, they create film, both in Hollywood and at, regular everyday people. That's going to become a central conversation. And what just appeared in my head again was the Lovers card. And remember I said how the Lovers is my internet card. So I think that you're going to see the rise of the internet-based creator, not just a content creator. I think that sometimes that can be used kind of condescendingly, but the individual art creator, whether that's music, film, online, like long-form content, TikToks, art, digital art, it doesn't matter. But I think that you're going to see the rise of the creator in this particular department. Long ways. We've got the Eight of Pentacles, the Nine of Pentacles, and the Emperor. This is about people working really, really hard on their careers, being able to chisel out a specific skill set. Chisel, I think it's interesting that I said that. Being able to chisel out a specific skill set that's going to allow them to become basically the king of their particular art form. Once again, Beethoven and Mozart were 2 characters that popped up during the previous Pluto and Aquarius transit, as well as other artists in other countries. I had some specific names in mind, but they're gone. Those are the 2 most prominent ones. If you take a look at the artists that popped up during the last Pluto and Aquarius transit, there were a lot of young artists that came up, and they were in their teens, and they were able to show off their paintings, their music, their sculptures, that kind of thing. We have some real classics today because those folks put their stuff out there back then. I think you're going to see more of that during this Pluto and Aquarius context. And it's interesting. Above and below the Nine of Pentacles, up top, we have the Five of Wands in reverse, and we have the Seven of Wands upright. That speaks to me of some things going on behind the scenes for them. Behind closed doors, there's going to be some conflict that people don't want to get out there. Maybe they get out there through rumors, but it might not be spoken about explicitly. And then publicly, those same creators might be attacked pretty regularly. I think it's interesting there's conflict around this particular figure in the Nine of Pentacles. It might be because there's greed for money, but also greed for clout, for attention. And people might choose to attack these creators because it gets those attackers' attention, but also just because of flat-out jealousy. Let's talk more about some of the other cards. I've got the first row is going to be the Ace of Cups. There we go. Ace of Cups, the Eight of Pentacles, and the Ace of Wands. That's about new skill sets being developed. They are highly emotional. It's a whole new emotional opportunity. It's a whole new way of doing things. There's going to be a lot of bright, new, creative stuff for people to do to set themselves apart during this Pluto in Aquarius transit. And again, that can be to do with art, music, creating film either in Hollywood or at home with your own camera, with your own phone, if you will. There's going to be a lot of really neat new stuff coming out of this era that make people say that, hey, maybe we're hitting kind of a renaissance when it comes to this kind of stuff. You might see a lot of discussion when it comes to artificially created music and art and video, for instance. But I feel like with the Nine of Pentacles being at the center of this particular reading, that human creators are going to be put on kind of a pedestal. They're going to be saying, this is just so much better than anything a computer can do for now. That might change past this Pluto in Aquarius transit. After the sign of Aquarius comes Pisces, and that might be when things become a little bit more murky. So we'll see about how this changes, but I feel like there might be some things put into place to protect the human creator during this time, because again, Pluto in Aquarius is also about putting the humanitarian efforts first. Also Sagittarius, which I note that we've got a lot of wand energy. We've also got the Emperor. There's a lot of fire energy in this particular reading, which is perfectly in alignment with Sagittarius, another humanitarian sign. So we've discussed the vertical row together with the wands, all the attacking of the figure in the Nine of Pentacles. Let's have the last vertical row, which is the Five of Cups, the Emperor, and the Page of Wands. With the Five of Cups, that's about seeing what's been spilled and not seeing what new opportunities could take place. And those new opportunities could lead the figure to a bridge, to a settlement, to a town, if you will. So if the creator community can look past how they've attacked people in the past, how they've attacked certain creators in the past, there might be the building of a new community. Also, there might be some regrets about how the machine has kind of taken precedence when it comes to creating new stuff. There might be some regrets. And if we can look past those regrets, we can build a community that is stronger for it. And also we can see how there have the possibility of some laws being laid down. With the Emperor, that's about creating boundaries around creation. It's not just chaotic creation here. There are some boundaries being laid down specifically about what is appropriate when it comes to art, film, and music, and what isn't. Now, this is interesting. As I'm filming this, the conversation around P. Diddy is happening right now, and what is appropriate for a creator, who they are to be behind the scenes, and how that relates to their public figure. There might not be some new rules, some new societal rules taking place when it comes to separating the art from the creator, but on the other hand, there might be. There might be some regret when it comes to making heroes out of people who had no business being made heroes out of. And we kind of learn to say, this isn't appropriate, and we need to uplift creators who are going to be better for society, better role models for society. There might be some of that. There might be some regret towards how we thought of those people with the Page of Wands in reverse. That's kind of like a childlike aspect. There might, cancel culture, that's interesting. There might be some societal laws being laid down when it comes to cancel culture. And us saying that was a really childlike mindset that had no business being in our art, film, and music sector. That cancel culture has some positive aspects. We are supposed to hold our artists accountable. We are supposed to hold our content creators accountable to a certain degree. But I also feel like in some ways, maybe that's what this Five of Wands, this Seven of Wands is about, is cancel culture just gone wild. And I wonder if there won't be some new action being taken there when we say, maybe cancel culture needs to hold itself accountable every once in a while and not just be in the business of holding other people accountable. Maybe cancel culture needs to take an internal look at itself and say, this is too far, or this isn't far enough. Why do we hold certain artists on a pedestal when they had no right being there to begin with? And with this Ace of Cups, this Five of Wands in reverse, and this Five of Cups, I'm seeing the potential for there to be some real regret in how our younger selves may have behaved when it came to canceling a particular artist because we thought that how they said something or behaved wasn't appropriate. But as we matured, we saw a little bit more clearly about why they said that thing, why they did that thing, and there might be some regrets in how we behaved in that particular way. And I'm seeing on the bottom row, horizontal, Ace of Wands, Seven of Wands, and Page of Wands in reverse, that we'll have some real regret for how our younger selves may have behaved when we attacked those creators for doing that thing we thought we didn't like. But then we got older and we experienced more of the world for ourselves, and we realized maybe we jumped to some conclusions that we shouldn't have done. That would be some new things for us. And I hope that we would be big enough to apologize for how we behaved before we moved forward into a brighter new future for art, film, and music. This might be kind of cool for, the next 20 years or so. At least I hope that to be the case. Okay, let us next take a look at religion. This should be interesting. So Spirit chose the uncertain oracle when it came to talking about religion. I have merge. I have serendipity. I have rest, if you can see the not glare. And then I have a really pretty card. It's hope. It's prettier in person than it is on my little camera, okay? So this isn't a bad reading, but I feel like a lot of people get really, really emotional when it comes to their religion, not just faith. And they get defensive about their specific religion, not just their faith. And I define religion as, like, say, for instance, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, and then faith is what goes on personally within your heart. It doesn't matter what religion you ascribe to, your spirituality is what I put together with faith, okay? With merge, I feel like that's going to be the combining of some religions. You know, in some Pluto and Aquarius, past Pluto and Aquarius transits, I believe there was one in the 1500s where Protestantism was really starting to become a defining religion, if you will, separate from Catholicism. And Catholicism had to play catch up, if you will. And I wonder if there isn't going to be the combining of some religions, some denominations, if you want to look at specific sects that have split off from the main religion and gone more specific with their laws. I wonder if there isn't going to be a combination, literally a combining event, because we're stronger together in numbers. And there might be some people who say, what were we fighting for 200 years ago or 500 years ago or whatever have you? Why don't we come back together? It'd be a whole lot better if we did. There might also be the merging. I just distinguished faith versus religion. There might be a merging of faith versus religion. There might be more people who put their whole heart, their whole spirituality into their religion in ways that we haven't really seen before. I feel like, and please excuse me if I'm being offensive to anybody, that's not what I want to say. I want to help. But I feel like a lot of people have taken a kind of casual feeling when it comes to practicing religion. When it comes to their faith, they aren't really faithful. They just do the whole religion thing because that's socially acceptable. I wonder if there isn't going to be less of that and more people saying, I'm in this religion because my faith leads me here. I am firing on all cylinders when it comes to my faith and practicing my religion. Serendipity is about sudden luck coming out of nowhere, an unexpected luck that you didn't expect to see. And that might be like that Three of Wands in reverse kind of energy. You weren't expecting this. Like, wow, this is kind of cool. There might be some really surprising things, good things that happen within religion specifically, not within the personal individual faith, the personal individual spirituality, if you will. And that might bring a lot of hope to people. I'm seeing rest. I'm seeing that a lot of people who may have been really pushing for change in their religion in a positive way get to kind of rest and watch things unfold because there's so many good things to hope for. Do I need to block my face? Is that what needs to happen here so it can focus? But there's going to be a lot to hope for when these leaders say, finally, people get it. And now I cannot rest on my laurels, so to speak. But yeah, Spirit is saying that there is going to be some resting on laurels. As long as people don't stay stagnant in resting on laurels, I see nothing wrong with this. There's going to be a lot of really neat things. Hope, serendipity, rest, merge. I feel like there's going to be a lot of really cool things happening in religion where kind of like the legalistic stuff goes away because it's just flat out not needed anymore. It's too restrictive. It's too, I'm legalistic. I feel like the legalistic stuff is going to die out and that there's going to be hope coming back into those religions. Now, I also feel like the religions, the denominations that hold on to the past because how it was in the past is how it should always be, I feel like those religions are going to start to die out. And I already see that in the rise of the nuns. And I don't mean as in like Catholic nuns, but I mean Nones nuns. The people who say, I don't ascribe to any particular faith or religion, but who might describe themselves as spiritual. You might see more of those kinds of people say, I do appreciate my faith, my spirituality, but I don't need to be a part of religion in order to be faithful, in order to be spiritual. And there might be the rise of the nuns in the case that those churches that continue to stay legalistic and don't change with the times, you're going to see those faiths, those religions die out. Okay, let's move on. What have I got next? Oh, political structures. So those things we don't talk about, politics and religion. So I'm talking next about conservatism versus progressivism. Be right back. So let's have a conversation. When I say politics, I don't mean who voted red, who voted blue. I'm talking about progressivism and conservatism. Those structures, those societal structures that are a part of those two kinds of things. Like one side says we need to go forward, the other side says the past has stuff for us to learn from. Both can be good depending on how they're used to control versus guide, if that makes any sense, okay? So I've done a 9-card Lenormand spread for this. Maybe it's not surprising that we have Lily, the white lily, appearing in the center. I associate the white lily with establishment, and it lands on the house of the tree. I feel like the tree is going to start to be cut down. The establishment is going to be radically changed during this Pluto and Aquarius. Start to be changed. This stuff takes time, and I'm seeing with the lily is surrounded on either side horizontally by moon and mountain. There's stuff that took place behind closed doors for a really, really long time, since the last Pluto and Aquarius transit. So literally the late 1700s. There's stuff that has been laid foundationally, that's been there for a long time, been behind closed doors now for a long time, that's going to be really difficult to reveal. Mountains appears on the house of clouds, which means that we won't see it clearly very easily, but I distinctly got the impression that the tree, the establishment, was going to change radically. The tree was going to be cut down, if you will, because diagonally, going forward into the future, you have whip and snake. The establishment is going to be deeply punished for the deceptions it's foisted upon the American people. And I'm seeing the past influences, the past diagonal. You have star and animus, which is my masculine influence card in this particular 7th sphere Lenormand deck. That's basically, there were a lot of plans, a lot of desires that the people in charge, who tended to be masculine, okay, not saying that there weren't plenty of feminine politicians out there, but the people who laid down the law, who changed things, tend to be masculine people, okay? That's just unfortunately how it is in the United States. And they've had dreams about establishing their hold. Here's the thing. The masculine card in this case lands on the house of the snake, which is how tells me that they had to get their influence by deception, by being two-faced, taking money from one group and saying to the opposing group, we're for you, we believe in your ideals, and that kind of thing. There were definite plans, and it's been this way now for generations upon generations of political structures. When I look at star, it lands on the house of the ship, which is about it being a long-term thing that not just one generation of political movers and shakers have done. It's been generations of this, and doesn't that make sense? Change is long-term, often long-term, and it takes a while to get to where we need to go. Let me look at this top row, which we have whip, clover, and star, and that tells me that there were some lighthearted dreams that were taken seriously at one point. You know what? These are empty promises. We're going to start, there's the potential that during this Pluto and Aquarius transit, that people who make empty promises about what they're going to do, all these amazing things that they're going to do in the future, that's going to be more punished. We're going to hear about that. And it's going to be quick moving too, because whip lands on the house of the rider. Clover, I noticed, appears on its own house. Clover. So that's about just being kind of wishy-washy in my opinion. This is about, it could be about taking risks, and is the risk worth the reward, that kind of thing. And I feel like in this particular era, the people who are in, not just politicians, but the people who like talking heads, for instance, some like political pundits, there's going to be a whole lot more bite back, a lot more risk, a lot more biting on the ass for saying, you said this particular thing, you're not holding to your ideals. You said this one thing, but then you turn around, right around and say this. There's going to be a lot more punishment of those kinds of people. I'm thinking like Carrie Lake, for instance, the Arizona politician. I don't know if she's running or if she's an incumbent or something like that. But her platform's been all about how bad abortion is. And as soon as they enact an 1864 abortion ban, suddenly she's all for it, right? So I'm seeing a whole lot more punishment of those kinds of people. We're going to start seeing them and talking about them the way they deserve to be talked. Let your no be no, let your yes be yes. Stand by put your money where your mouth is. Stand on your ideals and don't waver, and you're going to command more respect in this Pluto in Aquarius transit. I suspect, generally speaking, okay, I need to say that there is always room for change, that something could happen and things could shift and this reading would no longer be totally accurate, would be inaccurate completely, right? But we're looking at general themes, and this could be kind of cool. Let's see what happens, okay? Let's talk about this bottom row where we have animus, fish, and snake. Now, I associate fish with financial structures, and earlier we were talking about how the King of Pentacles was going to hoard his wealth in the Four of Pentacles and was resisting death when it came to death in reverse. In the death card, the wealthy person, I think it's a king, is the first to go. They're already down on the ground. And I see these kinds of structures being exposed once again. Animus, fish, and snake. That's about financial structures that have deceived us for years being exposed. Fish lands on the house of the coffin, and snake lands on the house of the scythe. There's going to be an end to the buried monies, if you will, that these political pundits, these politicians, these movers and shakers, the heads of PACs, political action committees, right? We're also lobby groups. We're going to see a lot of tearing apart of those hiding structures that have kept them protected for so long. Those are going to be exposed. It's going to be deeply uncomfortable. That's going to make them angry. Swelling of rage. I said swelling at the beginning of this beast of a reading it's turning into. This is going to make a lot of people in those political spheres really, really upset and angry. And you know what? I'm getting the Republican, Democrat, two sides of one coin. It's going to hit everybody. It doesn't matter if you vote blue, red, donkey, elephant, it's not going to matter. This is going to hit everybody that was being dishonest and deceptive about where their money came from, was being kind of frivolous when it came to just throw your money at this, throw your money at that, donate at this lobby group, then donate to this other opposing lobby group because it makes me look good. They're going to be embarrassed. They're going to get angry about being exposed and all this kind of stuff. And I can hear some people in my audience who are like, fuck yeah, right? I can hear that right now. This is going to be a really tumultuous time. How many times am I going to say that in this reading? Tumultuous. How many times am I going to say that? Let's look at one more area, maybe two more. We've got star, mountain, and snake. It's going to be difficult to ferret out what were lies when it came to their promises and what they actually wanted to do. Or it will be difficult to say, it will be difficult to say, was that a lie? How about that? Was that a lie? It might be difficult because people might not want to see this. Or maybe it's just going to be difficult for us to question these people whom we've trusted for so long. It's easy to question the opposing side, but not so much to question the side that you're supposedly on. That's going to be more of a challenge. And these folks, these people who move political structures, they're going to do their damnedest to hide. But that won't be easy in this particular transit. Not at all. I'm being told to look at the lily. What's going on there? Establishment will be raised eventually. like the start of the American political establishment. All the lobby groups, all the PACs, all the political pundits, the politicians will be raised. Uncomfortable isn't describing it entirely. This is going to be incredibly destructive to the American government system. It's going to be discouraging. Okay, I'm seeing that quite a few people are going to okay, how about a political revolution? Another American revolution, just against the structures that we've been abiding by for so long. This is going to be a painful upending, and that's why I see challenge when it comes to us examining their political promises, is because the whole thing's going to be challenging. Uprooting an entire political system, an entire system of governance is going to be challenging and sad and destructive. Heads will roll. Okay. Bastille is what popped into my head. Guillotine. I wonder if we're not going to have something similar to what we saw in the French Revolution, where a whole system of government is replaced by a new system of government. There's the possibility that this is going to be a bloody mess, a literal bloody mess. As in, some people will die. You might not like this. You might be saying, fuck yeah, death to those, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes actually time for heads to roll, I don't know that you're going to cheer this on necessarily. Maybe you will. It's going to be up to you and who you are as a person. This is going to be a difficult revolution that must take place in order for something new to arise. Okay. Spirit says to pull the cards up. I hope it isn't you in terms of whose heads roll. I hope you're protected if you're watching this. Let's talk about family structure next, because that's important. With the Industrial Revolution, we saw the end of a family structure where multiple generations of family lived together and worked on the same farm. And it was that way for centuries, for decades, for how long. We're going to see the end of, we saw the end of that during the Industrial Revolution, when people started leaving the farm to go work in the city. We started having more two-parent, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, however many people had. We saw the rise of the nuclear family with the Industrial Revolution. And so, let me shuffle with the Rider-Waite-Smith cards. Never mind. Let's shuffle with the Uncertain Oracle, and I'll be right back with you. For a general reading on the changes that the family structure might face, I think that we can reference back to that jobs reading where I looked at the Lenormand cards and saw that a lot of pink collar jobs were going to be replaced by machines, by our artificial intelligence. So there's going to be some tie-in there. Obviously, that's going to be one area where there are going to be a lot of structural changes that affect the family. I have Reach, a pretty card. I've got Nostalgia. So already I'm feeling kind of a return back to a multi-generational kind of structure, or definitely a more conservative structure where more feminine people go back into the home. And also I'm seeing like housekeeping. Why is that word there? Okay, maybe there might be the rise again of home economics. There used to be home economics classes being offered in schools. You might see that rise again, where you learn to cook, the chemicals you do use and don't use to clean clothes, clean the house, clean your kids, that kind of thing. But also in how to manage finances in a way that benefits the overall family structure. I'm feeling a little bit more of a conservative family structure come back into play, just because that will be what's most beneficial for this particular transit. I'm also getting house husband as well. Maybe not so much for a lot of families, But I'm feeling like a lot of men are going to feel, because their jobs will also, it's not just pink collar jobs, it's also going to be blue collar jobs and other kinds of jobs, white collar as well, that are gradually going to be replaced by machines. And men will be forced to question, if my job is being replaced and providing for my family comes from a different area, or I provide for my family in a different way, what is my role going to be in my family? Whether I have one of my own or I continue to participate with my extended family, my family of origin, that's going to change. Look, reflection. That's the reflection card. We're going to be thinking a whole lot more. What is the role of the family? What is my role within my family? Slow changes. Definitely. Slow changes, and people are going to be encouraged to slow down. Encouraged to. That doesn't mean that they will. I feel like a lot of people will be frantic when it comes to them seeing their jobs, their careers being replaced by machines. That's going to be incredibly upending. When I read for the jobs, it wasn't just the pink collar jobs. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be blue collar jobs. It's going to be white collar jobs. Again, it's going to start with the mundane tasks. It's going to be a slow change. But you're going to be encouraged to slow down and not frantically look for a way out of this, because there is no way out of this kind of gradual, slow change. Pluto in Aquarius is about wiping off the slate of both good and bad things. Some things that are good will be replaced by things that aren't as good. But in this particular case, slowing down to think about what you do want to replace the bad, for instance, what you do want to replace the bad with. Will it be worse things? Will it be better things? Slowing down is going to be key when it comes to thinking about your role within the family and about the family unit in general. That's going to change radically. But I feel like reaching out to others, chosen family might become more of a thing, that we create family structures with friends that we've had for decades, maybe even all of our lives. Nostalgia comes into play here as well. We might be reaching out to people that we haven't contacted in a long time and reforming not just friendships, but really powerful friendships to the point that they feel like family, brothers, sisters, cousins. We might call them cousins even though that they're not related by blood. There might be a recreation of the family unit in the sense that we think of friends as being part of the family unit, being so close that they become a part of the family unit. More community, just because it's Pluto in Aquarius that's focused on the humanity, but when we're not working our asses off all the time, who do we turn to? It's got to be the people. Even if it's online, it's not other animals that we talk to necessarily, although they can be part of our families. It's other human beings that we can have conversations with, that we can create societal structures with. And sure, pets will be part of that too. I can see that. Okay, pets as children, for instance. There might be a lot of people who choose not to have children, but they do choose to have fur children, if you will. Absolutely precious. Let's move on to I put as a subcategory under family, I put education. And this is going to take, let's do Lenormand. I'm going to shuffle and I'll be right back. So I've already laid out the cards. At the center of this Lenormand reading on education, we have animus. That's the masculine structure of society. Masculine structure of society. And I think it's interesting because the feminine structure of society appeared in the jobs reading that I talked about, the pink collar jobs, and I specifically said educators, teachers were going to be affected by this Pluto and Aquarius transit. And here we are in education. We have tree, we have fish, we have snake, animus, the masculine structure. We have mountain, we have moon, and we have lily. And in this case, it's going to be a white lily, a an establishment kind of structure. If it were a red lily, I call that sexual, but we don't have that here. It could be a possibility, but not so much. I think that there, if anything, there's a risk for sexual abuse in these kinds of circumstances. Let me talk about why, okay? So with tree and lily, those guys are bookending each other. This new establishment of education being so focused on money and deception is going to be really difficult, challenging to work with, to change, because the focus on money is going, like, unfortunately, the people in charge of these kinds of educational, okay, I'm getting Amazonification. The Amazonification of education has already been going on for a long time, and I think that we're going to see more of it, and it's going to be quite destructive, if you will. So tree lands on the house of the writer. That's about a really fast-moving thing that's going to be difficult to get ahead of, to chop down, so to speak. And when I say difficult to chop down, mountain lands on the house of the tree here. This is going to be really difficult to change for the better in this department. Pluto and Aquarius, in this particular case, is going to wipe away some not so great things about the educational sphere, but then it's going to replace those things with worse things, I feel like, with this reading so far. I'm more than happy to be wrong in this case, because it's going to be so money-centered, and people are going to make a business about lying to students, their parents, to educators, to people in the educational administrative department. They're going to make a business out of lying to them and saying, this is good for us, for the future generation, for our global society. They're going to make a huge business out of lying to people about this. And it's going to go on for a long time, because snake lands on the house of the ship, which is about a long-term journey. And I feel like a lot of animus lands on the house of house, which tells me that a lot of the people who make decisions, who tend to be more about structure, law, as opposed to creation and chaos, what I associate with the Empress versus the Emperor. I feel a lot of the people who are going to be in charge of these educational maxims, we should be doing this for the good of the educational sphere and all that kind of good stuff, they're going to be doing a lot of this behind closed doors, where they don't want people to see exactly what's going on, because then it will be more difficult for them to lie to us. Quite literally, the animus figure is surrounded by snake and mountain. It's going to be more difficult to lie to us if they don't keep things concealed. If we, moon lands on the house of clouds, if we were to use our intuition and look into what it is exactly that's going on, we might be able to ferret out some of these lies. But because it lands on the house of clouds, I feel like they're going to lie to us, because they're going to say, look at all of this money that can be made or saved because we do this, because we allow machines, artificial intelligence, to teach the working class. It's been my theory for a while that the most wealthy will still have access to in-person teachers, mentors, tutors, people who grade their papers and that kind of thing. And it'll be everybody else who are taught, graded by, disciplined by machines and that kind of thing. We'll see. Well, time will tell, okay? But I see our intuition being clouded by money and all the rewards that could come of it, when this tells me, with snakes so close by the fish, that tells me that there's just a whole lot more risk than there is reward to us going to this particular kind of system. And yet I see this system growing so tremendously because people don't see clearly, and because they choose to believe lies over feeling out their intuition and saying, this feels wrong. I do feel like there will be people who say, this doesn't feel right, but I really trust I trust Bill Gates or whoever is talking about education this month, this particular TED Talk speaker. I trust this individual. Therefore, I should not listen to my intuition when it says this might not be good, and I'm going to choose to trust this individual instead. This is going to be problematic. Education is going to get considerably worse before it gets better. I don't see Aquarius turning this humanitarian eye to this particular sector of our lives and making it better during this particular transit. Pluto tells me that this is about death, and that later on there is the potential for rebirth, but not during, possibly, I'd love to be wrong, possibly not during this Pluto in Aquarius transit. I feel like things are going to get much worse before they get better, and I'm really upset, sad to have to say that. There might be the rise, like even in private school, you're still going to see the Amazonification of things happen. So a lot of people might choose to homeschool, and that might be where the feminine structure of society says, well, I don't have a job because my job went away to a machine, therefore let me see what I can do to tutor, mentor, even school my children, if you choose to have children, school my children at home, avoiding this altogether. And even then, I'm concerned that some of the curriculum that is used by these parents might still be Amazonified, in the sense that it says that what's going on in education is good, when I don't see much stuff to be excited about, unfortunately. I wish I had better news in this department. Let us move on to, last and not least, scientific discoveries. General scientific discoveries. I'll see you in a bit. Didn't mean to bump the camera. Whoops. So I'm using the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck for this particular reading on scientific discoveries, and I wish I had better news, because I've got the Two of Swords in reverse, the Chariot in reverse, Four of Swords in reverse, and Strength in reverse, which tells me that the community that would create scientific discoveries has made the choice to not go forward on some cool new things that they could have put out but are choosing not to. They're choosing to rest when they shouldn't be resting at all, and they're going to choose to be cowards. I could say that's enough. I'm really upset, actually. I'm angry even. I'm pissed off. Because we have some, this is the perfect time to have some amazing discoveries. It feels like it's not going to be the big corporate conglomerates that make cool discoveries. It's going to be smaller people who do. So, okay, maybe it's not all bad, but I'm annoyed at the idea that people who have all this money and all this power are like, no, we're not going to do this shit. Fuck you. And I hope the individual makes some really cool discoveries and that we know about them. Thanks to the power of the internet, we don't need the newspaper and the hear ye, newspaper boy in the corner. We don't need the messenger on a horse to go spread the news, so to speak. But I'm hoping that we pick up on these cool scientific discoveries from the individual, like small labs, like one person, two people, like a family of people, maybe literally a family who work on these discoveries because they've got the passion. They're looking for a cure. They've got the undivided passion, and they can inspire passion people who can fund their discoveries. That's more what I'm seeing here. Okay, so maybe look for scientific discoveries from the individual and not so much from the conglomerate. Still pissed off a little bit, though. Okay. For the people who need hope, let's pull 3 cards from the Uncertain Oracle, because I think this is a good way to close out the reading. If this particular video made you feel hopeless, if you are in a profession that you feel like could be replaced gradually, even gradually, by artificial intelligence, by machines, or people who are just discouraged about the way that the United States could be going, and Earth, in this Pluto and Aquarius transit, I'm hoping to give you something cool to close out on. So 4 more shuffles. 4. 3. 2. Last shuffle. And we're taking from the bottom and not from the top. We'll take just 3 cards. We got the merge card again. There's merge. Belonging. Make families with people that you belong with. They don't need to be related by blood. They just need to be not the water of the womb, but the blood of the covenant. Okay? Spirit. Okay, this might be the time to get in touch with your spirit guides, your ancestors, with the universe in general. This might be the time to go out in nature for maybe an extended period of time, or however long you can handle, however long you can manage. Maybe your allergies don't let you be out there for too long. Anyway, connecting back to the earth in the same way that our ancestors did, regardless of what culture you may have descended from, regardless of what people you may have descended from. Getting back in touch with community, back in touch with earth, might be one of the best ways that you can possibly handle this transit. It might bring you to your best, your highest self. If you were looking for some hope from this reading, there you go. Find your people. Find your happy spot in nature. Do what you can to uplift nature. Do what you can to uplift the people in your community. And you might be able to handle this transit a whole lot better than you ever expected being able to do. Folks, that was a beast of a reading, and I guess I wouldn't have expected anything less from a discussion on Pluto and Aquarius, but there you have it. If I can give you a reading on how you could handle this upcoming transit, I'd love to do that for you. Drop me an email. It's in my channel description, and we'll talk. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great day and that this transit treats you well. Have a good one.